Hey, this is Joshua Buckley with Moody Gardens alongside Jonathan Barker and Wendy MacKeigan. They are the president and vice president at SK Films, who made our new movie, Flight of the Butterflies 3D, showing at our MG 3D Theater, which features the largest screen in Texas. How you guys doing today? Welcome to Galveston.
Fantastic. Love it down here.
Thank
really
you very
good.
much.
Well, tell me about what inspired you guys to make this film.
Well, we've been making these giant screen films for a long time, and you're always looking for just the right subject matter, and particularly in 3D. And butterflies, come on, what could be better? And that combined with this human story of a 40-year search by a scientist for where do they go in the winter, it just seemed like the perfect combination of a beautiful natural history story, perfect for 3D, with a human story to give it the emotion.
How did you guys come about the whole story with the scientists involved?
Well, we had done another film called Bugs 3D, which was very successful, and we learned that, of course, audiences love going down into this micro world and to see what goes on in terms of a natural history story. So then we thought, well, it might be good, as Jonathan just said, to bring in the human element, and there was that story, just waiting to be told, like it was on the cover of the 1976 National Geographic with Catalina Guado, completely covered in butterflies.
Talk about some of the challenges when you're going into exotic locations with these giant IMAX cameras.
Yeah, we had a very interesting time up at, because these butterflies, where they go in Mexico, the mountains are about 10,000 feet, and you have to be very careful because you don't want to harm their habitat and you don't want to harm any butterflies. So you're dragging this big equipment, and we had these big cranes, 1-ton cranes that we had to have guys actually drag up the mountain. It was just an incredible sight. So it was really challenging, and it's cold in the morning, and then it warms up in the middle of the day, so you got to dress for two different environments practically. It was tough, but very rewarding.
Did you guys really have a passion for butterflies before this movie, or is this something that kind of developed as you were going about making it?
Why don't you answer?
Well, you can tell by my poncho covered in monarch butterflies that I have a passion for butterflies, but I think everybody does. And as we are premiering this film around the world, what we're learning about is there's just, even for people who aren't particularly active or drawn to natural history, they love it. And I think there's something ethereal and indescribable about this fragile creature. And the fact that it doesn't live a long time, except for we now know that the super generation coming back south to MacKeigan lives many, many times longer than the other generation, so it lives an inordinately long time, 4 to 6 months. But I think it's just that they're so beautiful, they're so fragile, they go through this long period from, egg and through the metamorphosis to adult butterfly, and I just think it touches people.
Talk about what you guys are trying to convey to audiences as far as butterfly conservation, because a report is now coming out. The population's down 59%, and obviously Texas plays a big part in all of this.
Yeah, Texas is absolutely vital, and that's because essentially what happens is when the butterflies come down south through Texas on their way to Mexico in the fall, and they're just drinking nectar and they're storing lipids, fats, to make it through the winter. So when they get to the end of the winter, they basically are just at the end of their rope, kind of, right? And they're struggling to get north and find the milkweed. And they get to Texas, and if there isn't milkweed in Texas, we got a problem. And with all the weather issues that have been happening and droughts, there's been way, way less milkweed. And Texas is absolutely critical, because once they get here, if they've got enough food, because of course the caterpillars, first of all, the monarchs only lay their eggs on milkweed, and the caterpillars only eat milkweed. That's all they eat until they become a butterfly, in which they can sip nectar on different plants. But if there's a lot of milkweed in Texas, then we got a healthy population. They start to head north, and they find more milkweed all over. But Texas is absolutely vital to it.
Was that ultimately the goal of this film, is to bring awareness to that for people, especially down here that live in Texas?
Well, there was many goals. Obviously, because we're both producers and distributors, we wanted to bring an educational film about nature, a great natural history story, along with a very entertaining one. So that was the ultimate goal. But as we got into it further and further, and with our scientific team, the top monarch butterfly scientists around the world, we quickly learned that the butterfly was being more threatened, particularly the migration, than it ever had been before through several things, including what Jonathan mentioned. So that's why we have dedicated a large percentage of the profits of the film to monarch butterfly conservation. So it became, our scientists have spent their entire lives looking and studying and analyzing this creature. So as we could see that the population's numbers were declining steadily, and in some years quite alarmingly, I must say, then it became something more. And as we've been saying to audiences all around, we've given out 500,000 milkweed plant seeds because it's so easy. It's so easy to plant them, and you see in the film, the butterfly garden is astounding, and it's a great way to teach kids about nature and the interrelationship of the plant life to the insect to the animal life. Because the monarch butterflies, beyond being, pollinators, play an important role in the food chain because they actually are food for, birds and other insect life. So it became something much larger as we went along.
But we're sure pleased that it's so important for Texas. It's so important for Texas and in Texas. So there's a real Texas element to this. And one of the first shots in the film is a beautiful field of bluebonnets. And it's gorgeous.
Well, and speaking of the filming, we've gotten a lot of positive response from this film on Facebook, and we did have a question here from Richard Malloy. He asked, are any of the butterflies in the movie animated, and how hard was it for those monarchs to cooperate with the cameras?
No, all the monarchs you see in the sanctuaries in Mexico, the millions of them you see in shots, 100% real. The only butterfly that's animated is there's one little sequence where you're following it in flight. Mm-hmm. And most people, that's a mile high, and most people understand that that's an animated butterfly. Although we have had the question, is that real? Because the animators did such a brilliant job of it. And we actually worked hard on that shot because our scientists had to approve. Literally, they'd send it back and they'd say, no, 3 wing flaps and then stop, and then wait 8 seconds and do another 3 wing, okay, fine. The public wouldn't necessarily notice that. But it's very important for us to be really rigorous in these things. So even with that one only computer graphic butterfly, we had to nail it perfectly, especially since we have the National Science Foundation as one of our most important financiers of the film, and their standards are as high as you get.
Well, Moody Gardens is really glad to have you guys' movie out here. We love being part of the butterfly conservation effort, and we appreciate you two, Wendy and Jonathan, for coming and talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.